What if I told you that every ounce of pain you've ever felt, every heartbreak, betrayal, and failure could be turned into unstoppable strength? That the very moments you wanted to escape from were actually the forge of your greatness? Before you click away, I want you to imagine this. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world, sitting alone in his tent during a war, writing words not conquest, but of calm, reminding himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Why would an emperor, surrounded by chaos and enemies, write to himself about peace? What did he know about pain that most people today ignore? Because here's the truth. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is your greatest teacher, your sharpest mentor, and the only doorway to becoming unbreakable. But most people run from it. They drown it in distractions, scroll through their phones, blame the world, and wonder why they feel weak. The Stoics knew something we've forgotten, that pain, when used correctly, becomes power. But how? What do they actually do when life crushes them? In this video, you're going to learn 6 Stoic habits that turn pain into power. Real, practical, battle-tested habits used by philosophers, warriors, and emperors for thousands of years. But before we dive into them, I need to tell you a story. A story about a slave who became one of the greatest teachers in history. His name was Epictetus, and his entire philosophy was forged in chains. He couldn't control his body. His master could break his leg, and he did. But Epictetus realized something terrifying and beautiful. While others could hurt his body, they could never touch his mind. That was the first secret of Stoicism, the separation between what happens to you and how you respond. Now, before you think this is just ancient philosophy, let's open another loop. Fast forward to today. Imagine a world where every insult, rejection, or failure hits you like a wave, but instead of breaking you, it strengthens you. Imagine walking through chaos, a breakup, a business failure, or losing someone you love, and instead of collapsing, you rise calmer, stronger, and sharper than before. That's not a fantasy, it's a skill, and the Stoics mastered it. But here's where it gets interesting. The 6 habits I'm about to share aren't abstract. They're not about pretending to be emotionless or acting tough. They're the opposite. They're about facing pain fully, understanding it, and transforming it into something so powerful that it redefines who you are. And in the next few minutes, you'll discover how these habits shaped legends, from Marcus Aurelius to modern-day individuals who faced unimaginable pain and turned it into purpose. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you won't just understand pain, you'll be ready to use it. You'll see why Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men." And before we reach habit number 1, there's one more thing you need to realize. The Stoics didn't see pain as punishment. They saw it as a message. And if you can decode that message, you can change your entire life. In a moment, I'll reveal the first habit, the one that Marcus Aurelius used every morning to transform his fears into fuel. But before that, let's uncover the mindset that makes all 6 habits possible.
Every morning, before the world even knew he was awake, Marcus Aurelius would open his journal, what we now call meditations. He didn't write for anyone else. He didn't write for history. He wrote for survival. Imagine being the emperor of Rome, the ruler of millions, and yet starting your day by reminding yourself that you will meet the meddling, the ungrateful, the arrogant, the deceitful. Why? Because Marcus knew one truth that most people never learn. Your day is not yours until your mind is disciplined. This is the first Stoic habit, the morning mastery ritual, preparing your mind before the world attacks it. Marcus wasn't journaling for luxury. He was journaling to stay sane. His empire was crumbling, his friends betraying him, his body weakening, and yet, through his writing, he built mental armor. Every word was a weapon against chaos. And that's the first habit. Master the morning before the morning masters you. The Stoics believed the first few minutes of your day determine the tone of your entire life. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The first Stoic habit transforms wasted time into sacred time, a battlefield of the mind where you decide who you'll be before the world decides for you. Now, think about your mornings. What's the first thing you touch? Your phone? Notifications? News? You're letting strangers, algorithms, and chaos set the tone for your day. The Stoic would never allow that. Their mornings were sacred. Marcus Aurelius began with reflection, not reaction. Epictetus started with gratitude, not complaints. And Seneca began with purpose, not panic. What if you did the same? What if every morning, instead of diving into noise, you asked yourself, what kind of person will I be today, no matter what happens? But here's where this habit becomes powerful. It's not about writing or meditating for hours. It's about creating a command center for your mind. Imagine this. Before you step into the chaos of your day, you take 10 minutes to write your inner orders. You remind yourself, I will not be owned by anger today. I will not seek comfort over courage. I will not waste my strength on what I cannot control. That's not motivation, that's training. Every morning, you're sharpening the blade of your mind before battle. And if you think this sounds too philosophical, consider this modern loop. Some of the most successful and calm individuals today, Navy SEALs, elite athletes, CEOs, all follow the same principle. They prime their mind before they step into the storm. They visualize chaos and prepare for it. That's Stoicism in motion. The battlefield has changed from swords to screens, but the war is the same, the war for control of your mind. Marcus Aurelius didn't just survive his empire, he endured it with grace because of this habit. He turned pain into clarity every morning. And the next time you wake up anxious, lost, or overwhelmed, remember, you are the emperor of your own mind. The first act of every day determines whether you'll rule it or be ruled by it. But here's the twist. This first habit prepares you for the second one, which is even harder. Because while mornings shape your mind, adversity tests your soul. And the next Stoic habit is about what happens when life hits, when everything collapses and you're left with only your response. This next one was born in chains, in a place where comfort didn't exist, and yet it forged the most unbreakable mindset ever known. Stay with me, because the second Stoic habit reveals how to stay calm when your entire world burns and why Epictetus believed freedom isn't found in circumstances, but in response.
Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. And no one understood that better than Epictetus, the philosopher who began life in chains. Picture this, a young man born into slavery, his leg twisted and broken by his master, left to live crippled for the rest of his life. No wealth, no freedom, no control over his body. Yet in that darkness, Epictetus discovered something the world still struggles to understand, that no one can enslave a free mind. His master could command his body, but not his thoughts. He could inflict pain, but not control how Epictetus responded to it. And that's where habit number 2 is born. Control your response, never your circumstances. The Stoics believed that between what happens to you and how you react, there's a space, a sacred, invisible moment where your entire destiny is decided. Epictetus taught his students that the key to peace lies in that space. He would say, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Think about that for a second. It's not the insult, not the breakup, not the failure that hurts. It's the story you tell yourself about it. You can rewrite that story at any moment. That's the ultimate power the Stoics offer, the power to respond, not react. Now let's bring this ancient wisdom to modern life. Imagine you're at work and someone publicly humiliates you, or your partner betrays your trust. The instinct is to explode, to lash out, to sink into bitterness. But Epictetus would challenge you. What exactly has been taken from you? Your character? Your virtue? Your ability to think clearly? No. The external world may wound your pride, but only you can surrender your peace. The Stoic strength lies not in avoiding pain, but in refusing to hand pain the keys to their inner world. And here's where this habit becomes real. Every time something goes wrong, someone cuts you off in traffic, you lose a job, you fail at something important, you're standing in that same space Epictetus once stood in, the space between pain and power. Most people react instantly. They give away their peace like it's worthless. But the Stoic pauses. They breathe. They ask, is this within my control? And if it's not, they release it. That single decision, that moment of response, separates a weak mind from a powerful one. There's a modern example I love. In 1967, a U.S. Navy pilot named James Stockdale was shot down over Vietnam. He spent 7 years in a prison camp, tortured, starved, isolated. But he survived, not just physically, but mentally, by practicing Epictetus's teachings. Stockdale said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story." He couldn't control his captors, the pain, or the years stolen from him, but he could control his response. He became living proof that Stoic resilience isn't just theory, it's survival. Now here's where the open loop deepens. Controlling your response doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. The Stoics weren't emotionless robots, they felt deeply. Marcus grieved for his children. Seneca faced exile and death. Epictetus felt pain every single day. But they mastered the art of feeling without falling. That's the true Stoic secret. Not to eliminate emotion, but to elevate it into wisdom. So the next time life burns you, remember this. Your reaction can make you smaller or greater. Every moment of pain offers a choice: collapse or control, victimhood or virtue. The Stoic always chooses the latter. And that's why Epictetus's words echo through centuries. You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can control my will. But this is just the second habit. The next one goes even deeper. It's about transforming pain itself into purpose, not just surviving it. Because what if you could take every wound, every loss, every failure, and use it as raw material to build something greater? That's exactly what Seneca discovered, a method so profound that it turned his own suffering into wisdom that still saves lives today. Stay until the next moment, because habit number 3 will reveal the alchemy of Stoicism, how to turn the worst moments of your life into the foundation of your strength.
If Marcus Aurelius mastered the morning and Epictetus mastered response, then Seneca mastered the alchemy of pain, the art of transforming what breaks you into what builds you. Imagine being one of the richest, most influential men in Rome, an advisor to emperors, a playwright, a philosopher. You have everything: wealth, fame, power. And then, suddenly, it all turns to ashes. Accused of conspiracy, exiled from Rome, stripped of his fortune, and forced to live in isolation, Seneca lost everything he thought defined him. But instead of collapsing, he did something extraordinary. He turned inward. In the silence of exile, he wrote letters that would outlive every emperor who ever ruled. Letters about how to turn suffering into strength. This is habit number 3. Transform your wounds into wisdom. Seneca discovered that pain itself can be raw material, that every misfortune carries within it the blueprint of resilience. He wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. When everything was taken from him, Seneca realized that the only thing left, his mind, was all he ever truly needed. That's the Stoic alchemy, to turn adversity into education, to treat every hardship as a teacher instead of an enemy. Think about your own life. How many times have you cursed the moments that hurt you, the breakup, the rejection, the failure, only to realize later that those same moments made you stronger, wiser, more disciplined? That's not coincidence. That's the Stoic law of transformation. You cannot evolve without friction. You cannot rise without resistance. Modern psychology calls this post-traumatic growth. The Stoics called it living according to nature, using the storms of life to strengthen the soul. But here's where the habit becomes practical. The Stoics didn't just talk about enduring pain, they practiced preparing for it. Every day, Seneca imagined losing what he loved, his home, his status, even his life. Not out of pessimism, but out of preparation. He called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. By mentally rehearsing the worst, he became immune to fear. When exile came, he was already ready. That's what we forget today. Pain doesn't destroy the prepared mind, it refines it. Now, let's bring that to today's world. You lose your job, most people panic. The Stoic sees an opportunity to build something new. Your heart breaks, most people spiral. The Stoic reflects, what is this pain teaching me? Someone insults you online, most people rage. The Stoic smiles and says, this is practice. Every difficulty is training. Life isn't punishing you, it's preparing you. That shift in perspective alone can turn unbearable suffering into unstoppable strength. Seneca didn't avoid pain. He walked into it with open eyes. He taught that if you can learn to suffer well, you can live well. He wrote, difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. And that's the key. Every wound contains wisdom waiting to be discovered. The Stoic doesn't say, why me? They say, try me. But we're not done, because the next habit is the one that separates ordinary people from the truly unshakable. You've learned how to master your mornings, control your reactions, and turn pain into power. But habit number 4 is different. It's not about what you do, but about what you refuse to do. It's about mastering one of the most dangerous forces in human life, the desire for control over everything. And this is where so many people fail, because the harder you try to control what's outside your reach, the more you lose control of yourself. The Stoics knew this, and they developed a habit so profound, so counterintuitive, that it can dissolve anxiety and restore peace in seconds. Stay close, because habit number 4 reveals the hidden law of calm, the principle Marcus Aurelius used to stay composed while his empire burned. Imagine standing in the center of a storm, thunder cracking above you, winds tearing through everything you built, chaos spinning in every direction. Most people panic, trying to grab the falling pieces, desperate to control what's slipping away. But the Stoic stands still, unshaken, eyes calm, because they know something simple yet revolutionary. You can't control the storm, only your stance in it. That's habit number 4, the circle of control, mastering the art of letting go. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These aren't just poetic words, they're survival instructions. In every situation, there are 2 circles. The inner circle, what you can control, your thoughts, actions, effort, values, and the outer circle, what you can't, other people's opinions, outcomes, timing, the past. The tragedy of modern life is that we live almost entirely in the outer circle. We obsess over what others think, chase things beyond our reach, and exhaust ourselves trying to rewrite reality. The Stoic flips that. They live inside their circle of control. That's where power lives. That's where peace lives. Think about how much pain comes from fighting what can't be changed. You can't force someone to love you. You can't make time move backward. You can't guarantee success. Yet people drain their energy on what's already lost or not yet real. Marcus faced betrayal from his own generals, death in his family, and a collapsing empire. Yet he wrote, "Adapt yourself to the things among which your lot has been cast." He didn't waste time wishing the world was different. He focused on being different in the world. This habit isn't about giving up. It's about directing your strength wisely. When you stop chasing control, you reclaim energy to master yourself. That's the paradox. The more you let go, the stronger you become. Seneca called this the tranquility of the wise. He said, "A great mind becomes invincible by bearing what it cannot change." The Stoic doesn't fight fate. They flow with it, like a river moving around rocks instead of crashing against them. Let's bring this into modern life. You get rejected from a job. That's outside your control. But how you improve yourself next, that's inside. Your friend betrays you. You can't change their choice, but you can choose forgiveness over bitterness. You fail publicly. You can't erase it, but you can decide to rise smarter. Every time you shift your focus back to your inner circle, you're winning the Stoic war, the battle to own your response instead of your environment. And here's the real magic of this habit. It ends anxiety. Anxiety lives in the outer circle, in what-ifs, in imagined futures, in endless mental noise. But calm lives in the present, in what you can do. That's why the Stoics practiced something like modern mindfulness centuries before it was trendy. They returned to the now again and again. Do what's in front of you well, without distraction or complaint. That's the Stoic meditation. Action over obsession. But here's the open loop. The art of letting go isn't just mental. The Stoics practiced it physically. They simplified their lives, reduced desires, and trained themselves to detach from comfort. Why? Because freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. That leads us to habit number 5, one of the most misunderstood and life-changing Stoic practices: voluntary discomfort. The idea that the path to peace sometimes runs through pain, and that true confidence is built when you can live well with less than you think you need. Stay with me, because habit number 5 will challenge everything you've been taught about comfort, happiness, and success. It's the Stoics' secret weapon against fear, and once you learn it, you'll never look at struggle the same way again.
In a world obsessed with comfort, the Stoics sought the opposite. While everyone else chased luxury, they chased difficulty. They trained their minds to stay calm in chaos by practicing discomfort on purpose. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition I feared?'" This is habit 5, voluntary discomfort, the deliberate practice of hardship to build inner freedom. Because only the person who can endure discomfort is truly powerful. Let's picture it. Rome, 1st century. Seneca, once one of the richest men alive, strips away his fine clothes, eats stale bread, and sleeps on the floor for days. His servants are confused. Why would a man who owns palaces live like a beggar? Because Seneca understood something timeless. If you fear discomfort, you become its slave. But if you face it willingly, it loses its power. He was rehearsing for adversity, building immunity to fear. Now imagine applying this in today's world. Everyone wants an easy life, instant results, zero friction. But the Stoic sees comfort as a trap, a slow anesthetic that dulls the soul. Every time you avoid challenge, you lose a bit of your resilience. Every time you choose ease over effort, you surrender your potential. The Stoic reverses this. They seek small doses of discomfort to keep the mind sharp. Cold showers, fasting, waking early, silence, solitude, not as trends, but as training. Each act says, I can live without this. I am enough without more. This habit isn't about punishment, it's about preparation. You don't practice discomfort because you hate comfort, you do it because you refuse to depend on it. Marcus Aurelius slept on military beds even as emperor, reminding himself that luxury weakens the will. Epictetus owned almost nothing, saying, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." When life inevitably tests you, when plans fail, when loss hits, when control slips away, you'll stand firm because you've already rehearsed hardship. Let's bring it to your life. Try this. Once a week, do something deliberately uncomfortable. Wake up earlier than you want. Skip a meal. Leave your phone behind for a full day. Take a cold shower and remind yourself, I can do difficult things. These moments of voluntary struggle build a reservoir of quiet confidence, proof that you are not fragile. When life throws real pain your way, you won't break because you've already practiced bending. And there's a hidden benefit here: gratitude. The Stoics use discomfort not just to harden the mind, but to soften the heart. After sleeping on the floor, Seneca appreciated his bed more deeply. After fasting, food tasted divine. Discomfort reawakens appreciation. It reconnects you to reality, to the fact that joy isn't in abundance, it's in awareness. But here's where the story takes a turn. Because while voluntary discomfort trains your body and mind, there's another battlefield, the inner one, where invisible enemies like anger, envy, and fear live. And that's where habit number 6 begins. The Stoics didn't just fight the external storms, they conquered the internal ones. They built emotional armor so strong that no insult, no betrayal, no chaos could pierce it. Stay with me, because in the next part, we're going inside the mind itself. Habit number 6 reveals the Stoic practice of emotional alchemy, how to control the inner storm and turn destructive emotions into unstoppable focus and peace. This is the final and most transformative Stoic habit, the one that truly turns pain into power.
There is no storm more violent than the one inside your own mind. The anger that blinds you, the fear that freezes you, the anxiety that whispers lies at midnight. These are the enemies the Stoics trained hardest to defeat. Not because they hated emotion, but because they understood its power. Emotions, they said, are not the problem. Our relationship to them is. The same fire that burns can also forge. This is habit number 6, emotional alchemy, the art of transforming destructive emotions into disciplined energy. And no Stoic lived this more intensely than Marcus Aurelius himself. Imagine him again, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by betrayal, sickness, war. His generals plot behind his back, his children die young. The empire he protects is slowly crumbling. Yet in his private notes, the meditations, there's no trace of rage, panic, or despair. Instead, he writes calmly to himself, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, today I shall meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful. Yet none of them can harm me." Why? Because Marcus understood the Stoic secret. Emotions don't control you unless you feed them. He didn't suppress emotion. He observed it, named it, and redirected it. That's the first step of emotional alchemy. Observe before you react. When anger rises, pause. When fear whispers, listen, but don't obey. Epictetus taught his students to treat emotions like visitors. When impressions arise, he said, don't be carried away. Say, wait a moment, let me see who you are and where you come from. That moment of awareness, the pause, is where transformation begins. You take the raw energy of emotion and decide its shape. Here's the modern truth. Emotional control isn't about feeling less, it's about feeling wisely. Anger, for instance, can destroy or drive. Fear can paralyze or protect. Pain can break you or build you. The Stoic asks, what is this emotion trying to teach me? Instead of drowning in it, they dive through it to the lesson beneath. When you master that skill, you no longer need the world to be calm for you to feel peace, because the calm is internal. Now think about your life. Someone insults you online, your instinct is rage. A project fails, your instinct is despair. The Stoic doesn't deny the feeling, they channel it. Marcus would turn frustration into discipline. Seneca would turn loss into perspective. Epictetus would turn fear into focus. It's not about pretending you're fine, it's about using the energy of emotion to sharpen your mind. That's emotional alchemy, turning reaction into response, heat into light. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." In that same spirit, the Stoic sees every emotional storm as training. You can't become unshakable without being shaken. Every burst of anger is an opportunity to practice patience. Every wave of fear is a test of faith in your reason. The Stoic doesn't wait for peace. They create it, moment by moment, breath by breath. But here's where it becomes even more profound. When you stop being ruled by emotion, you become capable of compassion, because you no longer see other people's anger or cruelty as threats. You see them as symptoms of ignorance. Marcus wrote, "When someone does wrong, it's because they don't know better." The Stoic responds with calm, not because they're cold, but because they understand. Emotional mastery isn't suppression, it's wisdom wearing armor. And yet, even the greatest Stoics struggled. Marcus doubted himself. Seneca battled guilt. Epictetus endured pain daily. But through it all, they practiced again and again, until peace became their default. That's the essence of habit number 6. Emotional control isn't a gift, it's discipline. It's showing up every day to master the storm within. Now, you might think this is the end, but it's not, because there's one more level beyond emotional control. The Stoics called it amor fati, the love of fate, the ability not just to endure pain, but to love it, to look at everything life throws at you, every loss, every setback, every scar, and say, this too is good. That's the final transformation. And in the next part, we'll enter the ultimate Stoic state, the place where pain itself becomes purpose. Stay with me, because what comes next is the Stoics' final lesson, how to not only turn pain into power, but to fall in love with every moment of it.
Imagine waking up one morning to everything you feared. Plans ruined, loved ones gone, dreams shattered. Most people would curse fate, cry out, "Why me?" But the Stoic smiles, not in denial, but in deep understanding, and whispers, "Because this was meant for me." That is the highest Stoic state, amor fati, the love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but embracing it as fuel. It's the habit that transforms pain
into purpose, tragedy into transcendence. When Nietzsche revived this ancient idea centuries later, he said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." But the Stoics were already living this truth long before him. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything thrown into it." That's amor fati, turning every obstacle into energy. He didn't just tolerate hardship, he used it. When plague swept through Rome, when his armies fell, when friends betrayed him, Marcus never asked for easier times. He asked to become stronger for the times he was given. To him, fate was not an enemy, it was a sculptor carving his soul. What you and I call suffering, Marcus called shaping. Every loss was a lesson, every wound a teacher, every failure a refinement. Seneca too embodied this. When Nero ordered him to take his own life, Seneca didn't resist his fate. He met it with calm. He spent his final hours comforting his wife, writing words of peace while his life slipped away. He had practiced for that moment his entire existence. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor. In death, he proved what he taught. When you align with nature, with what is, no force on earth can destroy your serenity. Amor fati isn't passivity. It's ultimate power, saying yes to life on its own terms. Let's bring it to you. How often do you fight reality? How much energy do you waste wishing the past were different? Amor fati invites you to stop fighting and start flowing. To see everything, heartbreak, failure, loss, as part of your personal training. Life is not happening to you, it's happening for you. The Stoic doesn't ask why this pain, they ask what is this pain preparing me for? That shift rewires your entire mindset. Suddenly, obstacles become invitations, and every scar becomes a symbol of growth. Think of a seed breaking open in the dark. It looks like destruction, but it's transformation. That's amor fati. You are that seed. The cracks in your life aren't proof of failure, they're evidence of expansion. When you learn to love even the hardest moments, you stop being a victim of fate and start dancing with it. The Stoics' freedom is radical. Nothing can happen to you that you can't use. The storm becomes your training ground, the pain your path, the loss your lesson. But here's the twist. Loving fate doesn't mean you stop striving. The Stoic still acts, still builds, still fights for virtue. The difference is they detach from the outcome. They give everything, then accept everything. Amor fati is surrender and strength combined. The courage to say, let it be, and the faith to add, and let me rise through it. And yet there's one more layer. Because Stoicism was never meant to stay in the mind, it was meant to be lived. The next part reveals how the Stoics turned their philosophy into daily practice, how they made every choice, every conversation, every breath a training in virtue. It's the bridge between knowing and being. Stay with me, because Habit 7 will show you how to live Stoicism so deeply that your very presence becomes peace itself.
Philosophy means nothing if it dies in your head. The Stoics knew that reading words about virtue doesn't make you virtuous. You can memorize every quote from Marcus Aurelius and still be ruled by your impulses, fears, and habits. That's why the true Stoics didn't just study philosophy, they lived it. They treated every day as a gymnasium for the soul. Every challenge was a workout. Every person they met was a mirror. And every moment was an opportunity to practice. This is Habit 7, Living Stoicism, the discipline of action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Simple, brutal, and true. Words mean little without embodiment." Marcus didn't have the luxury of endless reflection. He ruled an empire in chaos. He didn't preach Stoicism from a peaceful temple. He practiced it in the noise of war, politics, betrayal, and death. That's the lesson. Stoicism is not for the calm seas of life.
it's for the storms. And the only way to know whether you truly understand Stoicism is to live it when it's hardest. Seneca called this philosophia activa, the active philosophy. He told his student Lucilius to test every principle through experience. He said, "We learn by doing, not by talking." Each morning, he would remind himself of the trials ahead, not to dread them, but to prepare. Each night, he would review his actions, not to judge, but to learn. This daily rhythm, morning preparation, evening reflection, was the Stoics' laboratory. They didn't meditate to escape life. They meditated to master it. And here's how this applies today. Your work, your relationships, your frustrations, all of it is your Stoic practice field. When someone cuts you off in traffic, that's your moment to practice patience. When your boss criticizes you unfairly, that's your moment to practice humility. When you fail, that's your moment to practice resilience. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about choosing your response. You train, moment by moment, to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. Epictetus gave his students a brutal but liberating challenge. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's the modern Stoic superpower, quiet strength. You don't need to announce that you're disciplined, calm, or resilient. People will feel it in your presence. When the world around you is losing its head and you remain composed, you become a living reminder of what's possible. You radiate stability in a culture addicted to chaos, and that energy is magnetic. It attracts respect without asking for it. Here's the deeper truth. Living Stoicism isn't about being perfect. Marcus lost his temper, Seneca made mistakes, Epictetus struggled with pain, but they all practiced coming back again and again to the path. That's real discipline, returning to your principles after every fall. When you treat each mistake as a teacher instead of a verdict, your life becomes self-correcting. You stop needing motivation because virtue becomes your default. And this is where the Stoic philosophy transforms from theory into transformation. Once you live it, you no longer need to force growth. Growth becomes automatic. You begin to notice that anger no longer shakes you, setbacks no longer crush you, and success no longer seduces you. You become centered, not because life is easier, but because you've trained your soul to be still amid motion. But there's still one unanswered question. If Stoicism is all about mastering the self, how do you maintain connection with the world? How do you love, lead, and create while staying detached? That paradox, to care deeply yet not cling, is what Marcus, Seneca, and Epictetus wrestled with until the end. And in the next part, we'll explore their answer, the Stoic way to love without attachment, to lead without ego, and to serve without losing peace. Because Stoicism isn't about isolation, it's about influence, the power to bring calm into chaos. Stay with me, because what comes next reveals how the greatest Stoics balanced detachment with compassion, power with humility, and solitude with purpose.
It might sound strange, compassion and stoicism in the same sentence. Many imagine Stoics as emotionless statues, cold and detached, but that's a modern misunderstanding. The Stoics weren't stone-hearted, they were strong-hearted. They didn't suppress love, they refined it. They didn't avoid people, they served them. They just refused to let their happiness depend on them. That's habit number 8, Stoic compassion, the art of loving without attachment and leading without ego. Marcus Aurelius ruled millions, yet he wrote, "Men exist for the sake of one another. Teach them or bear with them." That single line reveals everything. Stoic love isn't clingy or controlling, it's grounded in understanding. Marcus loved humanity despite its flaws because he understood those flaws. He knew every act of cruelty was rooted in ignorance, every insult in insecurity. That awareness bred compassion, not bitterness. To the Stoic, compassion is seeing clearly, not excusing evil, but understanding it enough not to become it. Epictetus, born a slave, taught that what upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about them. Imagine living under a cruel master and still saying that. His compassion came not from softness, but from mastery. He refused to let hate shape his heart.
When you practice Stoic compassion, you realize that anger only multiplies suffering, yours and others. The only way to stop the chain of pain is to be the one who doesn't pass it on. That's not weakness, that's power in its purest form. Seneca too taught this balance in friendship and leadership. He warned against dependency, not because love is bad, but because attachment blinds. He who depends on another for happiness, he said, makes himself a slave. Love to the Stoic is free, or it isn't love at all. True love is wishing the good of another even when it doesn't benefit you. It's giving without the need to be repaid. It's leading without the hunger for praise. It's standing beside others without losing your center. Now think about modern life. People cling to relationships out of fear, lead teams out of ego, post online out of validation. We mistake attention for connection and possession for love. The Stoic flips that entirely. Love becomes service, leadership becomes duty, and ego becomes the enemy. When you love someone stoically, you love them for who they are, not for what they give you. When you lead stoically, you lead by example, not command. And when you live stoically, you act from principle, not pride. Marcus, in his most private writings, often reminded himself, "Do not be Caesarified." He meant, don't let power corrupt your humility. Don't let flattery poison your purpose. Even as emperor, he saw himself as a servant of nature, a small part of something vast. That's the Stoic secret of leadership, knowing you're both essential and replaceable. It's what keeps ambition from turning into arrogance. Here's how to practice it. When you help someone, remind yourself that virtue is its own reward. When you love someone, remind yourself they're free to leave, and your peace doesn't depend on them. When you're praised, remember it's only opinion, not truth. And when you're criticized, remember the same. The Stoic leader acts from integrity, not insecurity. This kind of compassion creates strength that can't be manipulated. You can't be guilt-tripped, flattered, or emotionally hijacked. You remain kind because you choose to be, not because you're seeking approval. That's real freedom. That's real love. But Stoic compassion leads us to something even deeper, a quiet sense of purpose that transcends pleasure and pain. The Stoics believed every human being is born for a function, a role in the cosmic order. And when you discover that role, your duty, life stops feeling chaotic. You begin to live with direction, not drift. And that's where we're heading next, because habit number 9 is the foundation of every Stoic life, purpose through duty. The Stoics didn't chase motivation, they lived by mission. And when you find yours, even suffering becomes sacred. Stay with me, because in the next part, you'll learn how Stoics turned duty into destiny and why living with purpose is the only true freedom there is.
Most people chase motivation, bursts of energy that rise and fall like waves. The Stoics didn't chase motivation. They lived by duty. They understood that emotion is temporary, but purpose endures. This is habit number 9, purpose through duty. Living with mission, not motivation. Because when you live for something larger than yourself, discipline becomes devotion, and even pain becomes sacred. Marcus Aurelius woke before dawn each morning, exhausted and burdened, yet he whispered to himself, "You were born to do this." That wasn't pride, it was acceptance of purpose. He didn't rule because he wanted to. He ruled because it was his duty to serve the empire, to embody justice, even when it cost him everything. In Meditations, he wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I am rising to do the work of a human being.'" That line might seem simple, but it's a thunderclap of meaning. Because to the Stoic, the work of a human being is to fulfill your role with excellence, no matter how small or grand.
Seneca echoed this when he said, "To bear trials with a calm mind robs misfortune of its strength and burden." He saw duty not as chains, but as clarity. Knowing what you're called to do frees you from distraction. Modern life is full of noise, trends, opinions, opportunities that pull you in every direction. But when you know your duty, every no becomes easier. Duty narrows your path so you can walk it deeply. Motivation asks, "What do I feel like doing?" Duty asks, "What needs to be done?" And that single shift creates unbreakable people. Epictetus told his students, "Remember that you are an actor in a play the playwright chooses, short or long, comedy or tragedy. Your part is to perform it well." Imagine the serenity that brings. You stop demanding control over everything. You accept your role and play it with integrity. If your fate is to lead, lead with wisdom. If it's to follow, do so with humility. If it's to suffer, do it with courage. The Stoic finds freedom inside the limits of their duty, because purpose, not pleasure, guides them. In modern terms, this means stop asking what you want and start asking what you're meant to give. Your purpose isn't found in endless self-analysis. It's revealed in service. You'll discover it when your actions align with virtue. The Stoic knows that meaning is not something you stumble upon. It's something you create through disciplined action. When you wake up tired, but still give your best, that's duty. When you stay kind, even when no one notices, that's duty. When you push forward despite fear, that's duty. And here's the paradox. When you live for duty, you get everything motivation promised but never delivered. You feel peace, power, and pride, not from results, but from integrity. The Stoic doesn't need applause, because fulfillment comes from within. Marcus wrote, "A man's true delight is to do the things he was made for." Think about that. True delight. Joy rooted not in pleasure, but in purpose. This is why Stoicism produces unstoppable people. The athlete who trains through injury, the parent who shows up even when exhausted, the soldier who endures hardship for others. All of them are Stoics in spirit. They don't need hype. They have honor. They act not because it's easy, but because it's right. And when life becomes difficult, they whisper what Marcus did. You were born to do this. But there's still one more transformation, one that ties all Stoic habits together. Because discipline without reflection becomes rigidity, and duty without perspective can turn to pride. The Stoics knew the antidote: daily reflection. The art of reviewing your soul each night, sharpening your mind, and returning to virtue. That's habit number 10, the nightly ritual that built unshakable wisdom. In the next part, we'll step inside the Stoic's mind after sunset, when the world goes quiet, and learn the reflection practice that forged their calm, focus, and resilience. Stay with me, because what comes next is the Stoic's secret weapon, the evening conversation with yourself that changes everything.
When the noise of the day fades and the world sinks into silence, the Stoics began their most sacred practice, reflection. Not scrolling through distractions, not drowning in regret, but turning inward with calm curiosity. This is habit number 10, the Stoic reflection, the nightly ritual for clarity and peace. It was the mirror they held up to their soul every evening, and it's one of the reasons their philosophy still feels timeless today. Seneca, more than any other Stoic, practiced this habit religiously. In his letters, he wrote, "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said. I hide nothing from myself, I omit nothing.
Imagine that level of honesty. No self-pity, no excuses, just truth. Every night he asked, "Where did I live according to my principles, and where did I fall short?" Not to punish himself, but to improve. That's the essence of Stoic reflection. Not guilt, but growth. Marcus Aurelius did the same, except he made his reflections public. His meditations were never meant to be published. They were private notes to his soul. Each page is an example of this ritual in action. He would write after long, brutal days of battle and politics, reminding himself to stay humble, calm, and just. "If you are distressed by anything external," he wrote, "the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That sentence didn't come from reading, it came from reflecting, from practicing awareness daily until it became his nature. Reflection was the Stoics' form of spiritual hygiene. Just as you clean your body every night, you must also clean your mind. The Stoics believed unexamined emotions rot the soul. By revisiting your actions, you extract wisdom from experience before sleep. You convert mistakes into lessons instead of letting them fester into shame. You free yourself to start each day renewed, light, and focused. Here's how you can practice it. Before bed, turn off your distractions and ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I fall short of my values? And how will I be better tomorrow? Write the answers. Don't filter, don't judge, just observe. This small act rewires your brain. Over time, you'll notice patterns, recurring weaknesses, consistent strengths, triggers you can now manage with awareness. Seneca said, "He who daily puts himself under examination is freed from all fear," because reflection turns chaos into clarity. But the power of this ritual goes deeper than self-improvement. It's also liberation. Each night of honest reflection frees you from the illusions of ego. You realize how little control you have over outcomes and how much control you have over effort. You start to see that most of what you worry about never happens, and most of what matters is within. The Stoic sleeps not because they escaped their problems, but because they made peace with them. Modern life leaves no room for stillness. That's why this practice is more valuable now than ever. Reflection is rebellion in a world addicted to distraction. It reclaims your focus, your awareness, your direction. And when you do it long enough, you stop fearing failure because you see it clearly, as part of the process. But there's still one final transformation the Stoics practiced, a mindset so profound that it made them fearless, unbreakable, and deeply free. It's the realization that every moment could be your last, and that truth isn't meant to scare you, but to awaken you. The Stoics called it Memento Mori, remember you must die. In the next part, we'll explore this final habit not as darkness, but as light. Because when you truly remember mortality, you finally learn how to live. Stay with me, because habit number 11 is the one that gives meaning to every other Stoic lesson.
There's a phrase carved into the bones of Stoic wisdom: Memento Mori, remember you must die. At first, it sounds grim, almost dark. But to the Stoics, it wasn't about fearing death. It was about waking up to life. Because nothing makes you appreciate existence like realizing how fragile it is. This is habit 11, Memento Mori, the art of remembering death so that you can finally live fully. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about death, not because he was obsessed with it, but because he wanted to stay awake to the miracle of being alive. You could leave life right now, he reminded himself. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. Imagine if you truly lived by that line. No wasted time, no meaningless anger, no hesitation to say what matters. Marcus faced plague, war, and betrayal, but he used mortality as a compass, not a curse. Each dawn became sacred, each act of kindness urgent. Death wasn't an intruder. It was a reminder to live well before it came. Seneca said, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day." He saw mortality as the ultimate motivator for virtue. To him, procrastination was spiritual poverty.
because every delay steals from your only non-renewable resource, time. Seneca's wisdom hits harder today than ever in an age of endless distractions. We scroll, complain, and compare, forgetting that our hours are finite. The Stoic knows you don't control when you die, but you control how you live until then. Epictetus taught this too, but with the sharpest edge. When you kiss your child, say to yourself, he may die tomorrow. Not because he was cruel, but because he knew attachment blinds us to reality. By remembering impermanence, you stop taking what you love for granted. You see beauty in the ordinary, the warmth of a hand, the laughter at breakfast, the peace in silence. Memento Mori isn't about sadness, it's about seeing clearly. When you accept that everything ends, you start cherishing everything while it lasts. Here's how to live it today. Each morning, remind yourself that this day will never come again, so live it consciously. Each night, reflect as Seneca did. Would you be content if this were your last? And when fear of death arises, don't push it away. Look at it and say, this too is part of nature. The Stoics believe that to fear death is to misunderstand life, because death gives life its shape, its urgency, its sacredness. Modern Stoicism teaches that Memento Mori is not about counting your days, it's about making your days count. When you keep death close, your priorities reorder themselves naturally. Petty arguments fade, gratitude rises. You stop chasing approval and start chasing meaning. You stop living for someday and start living now. The power of this habit is liberation. Once you make peace with death, no loss can truly destroy you. No fear can fully own you. You stop clinging and start flowing. You realize, as Marcus did, that everything is borrowed. Your body, your possessions, even your breath. But that doesn't make life empty. It makes it infinitely precious. And yet this isn't the end, because the Stoics didn't just reflect on death to find peace. They used it to fuel life. They asked, if every day is borrowed, what legacy will I leave when the lender calls it back? That's where we're headed next, to the 12th Stoic habit, where philosophy meets legacy. Stay with me, because what comes next is the Stoics' answer to immortality. How to live in such a way that even death cannot erase your impact.
The Stoics never built pyramids or chased statues to outlast them. Their monument was their character. They knew that the only immortality worth chasing is the kind that lives in how you change the world around you, in the strength, calm, and courage you pass on to others. This is habit 12, legacy through virtue, living so that even death cannot erase you. Marcus Aurelius never wrote meditations for glory. He wrote them to keep himself good in a corrupt world. Yet those private notes became one of history's most enduring books. Why? Because virtue leaves fingerprints. Every time he chose patience over rage, duty over comfort, compassion over ego, he carved invisible marks on the human story. That's legacy, the quiet influence of integrity. Marcus knew power fades, monuments crumble, but character echoes. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, he said. Be one. Those 4 words outlasted empires. Seneca taught that fortune's gifts are temporary, wealth, fame, beauty, but virtue is self-made and self-owned. A good character, once established, endures, he wrote. Nothing can injure it, not even death. When Nero's cruelty destroyed Rome's finest minds, Seneca's letters survived, whispering across centuries about calm, reason, and mercy. His body perished, his wisdom didn't. That's the Stoic formula for legacy. Live so justly that time itself becomes your messenger. In modern life, legacy is often confused with followers, fame, or fortune. But the Stoic knows those fade like smoke. Real legacy is invisible, the calm you give to others when they're anxious, the honesty you show when lying would be easier, the strength you display when everyone else breaks. These are the ripples that travel far beyond your lifetime. When you live virtuously, your actions become seeds. You may never see the trees they grow into, but they will shade generations you'll never meet. So how do you practice this? Start small. Replace complaint with gratitude, reaction with reflection, indifference with integrity. Every time you choose virtue over vanity, you reinforce your character, brick by brick, until it becomes unshakable. Over years, that structure stands longer than any building. Marcus didn't plan for his writings to survive. He simply lived honestly, and honesty is immortal. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be remembered, you start living in a way that deserves remembrance. Because true legacy isn't self-centered, it's self-transcendent. The Stoic doesn't say, "Look at me." They say, "Learn from me." They live not for applause, but for alignment with nature, reason, and virtue. And that quiet alignment, multiplied over a lifetime, becomes light. But even legacy isn't the final step. There's a state beyond it, the ultimate Stoic habit that fuses all others, a life of tranquility through wisdom. A soul so disciplined, compassionate, and purposeful that it no longer fears loss, pain, or time itself. It's the peace Marcus wrote about in his final entries: serenity through acceptance, clarity through virtue, joy through simplicity. Stay with me, because the final part will reveal habit 13, tranquility through wisdom, the Stoic state of unbreakable peace. It's the destination of every Stoic journey, and perhaps the beginning of yours.
Everything we've explored, discipline, emotional control, resilience, virtue, awareness of death, converges here. This is habit number 13, tranquility through wisdom. The Stoic state of unbreakable peace. It's not the peace that comes from a quiet room or an easy life. It's the stillness that stands firm inside chaos. The Stoics called it ataraxia, serenity of the soul, the calm of a mind trained by philosophy. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, betrayals, and endless war, yet his writings glow with composure. Why? Because he learned to govern his thoughts. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, he said. When you learn to direct them with wisdom, the world can rage and you remain steady. Seneca described this peace as an evenness of soul. He said a wise person is like a rock against which the waves crash, yet it stands unmoved. Tranquility, he taught, isn't numbness, it's mastery. It's the quiet that comes when emotion serves reason, when impulse bows to purpose. He reminded us that storms are inevitable, but suffering from them is optional. A man is not hurt by what happens, but by his opinion about what happens. That single line can free anyone from anxiety, because it reveals where power truly lies, inside your judgment. Epictetus turned that truth into practice. Every day, he reminded his students, you cannot control events, only your response to them. He called this the discipline of assent, the art of approving only the thoughts that serve virtue. When anger arises, you pause. When fear visits, you question it. When desire tempts, you ask, is this under my control? The Stoic who lives this way becomes invincible, not because the world stops testing them, but because their peace no longer depends on the world. Today, tranquility is rare because noise is constant. Our minds scroll endlessly, reacting, comparing, craving. Stoic wisdom is the antidote. Begin each morning, like Marcus, sit in silence and remind yourself that the day will test you. Expect annoyance, disrespect, and difficulty, and greet them as training partners. Throughout the day, return to your breath. When frustration sparks, whisper, "This moment is neutral. My mind will decide its meaning." Each time you choose calm over chaos, you strengthen your inner fortress. The more you practice, the more peace becomes your natural state. You stop chasing pleasure and start appreciating presence. You stop fighting pain and start learning from it. You realize, as the Stoics did, that happiness is not an achievement, it's alignment. When your thoughts, actions, and values move as one, you live in harmony with nature, with reason, with yourself. That is the Stoic ideal, eudaimonia, a flourishing soul. And so our journey circles back to where it began, turning pain into power. Because every habit we've explored, from enduring hardship to remembering death, has one purpose: to lead you to this unshakable peace. The Stoic life isn't about escaping storms, it's about becoming the calm within them. When you reach that state, you don't just survive, you illuminate. You become an anchor for others, proof that serenity is possible in a chaotic world. As this video ends, take one breath, slow, deliberate, aware. Remember Marcus's words, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look there." That strength is the essence of Stoicism. It's not in temples or books or gurus. It's within you, waiting to be awakened through discipline, reflection, and virtue. When you master yourself, the world can take nothing from you. You have found power. You have found peace. You have found yourself. Now go live it. Be the Stoic who transforms pain into power, fear into wisdom, and time into legacy. And when the world wonders how you stay so calm, you'll smile. Because you'll know the truth. You didn't escape the fire. You became it.